But what really kind of got this whole accountability ball rolling that even predates the individual sensational cases of Weinstein, R. Kelly, and the like were the many, many, many founded accusations of child sex abuse by priests of the Catholic Church. And I guess we're coming up, maybe, are we about a generation away from that? Maybe like 20 or so years from when the floodgates just burst open of the rampant nature and the prolonged duration that the Catholic Church, the global Catholic Church, the fucking Vatican, and its respective dioceses across the United States, North America, South America, Asia, Australia, Europe, like where? Africa is not a corner that the Catholic Church did not touch, in which they were dispatching known pedophiles who were abusing children and basically blatantly ruining people's lives. Okay. So some states have taken some actions in order to allow the survivors of child sex abuse, especially by churches and institutions, to get some sort of recompense. Um, and in the state of Maryland, such a law was passed and it went into, I think it went into law October 1st this year. If I'm not mistaken, hold on, I think I have a piece that's going to confirm that fact. And this is different. With the law that Maryland passed differs slightly from the law that New York passed, the Adult Survivors Act that was passed in New York, that allowed adult survivors a 1 year period to bring civil lawsuits against individuals and institutions who may have assaulted them as adults. What Maryland did, they had their Child Survivors Act that passed, that if you were assaulted by a member of the clergy and a church or institution knew about it and covered it up, there is no statute of limitations on civil lawsuits. You could just bring them shits, right? Which I think is a good thing. Look at that. Maryland actually passing some shit that's actually potentially going to help people. But therein lies the rub, everybody, because the Catholic Church, instead of, being a bastion of, accountability and repentance and atonement, aren't these principles that Catholics specifically kick out there? I'm not Catholic. I was not raised Catholic, but I was raised with a number of Catholic friends and I went to their confirmation classes. So I kind of have some arm length experience with the Catholics a little bit. A lot of black Catholics in Maryland, by the way. Um so the Catholic Church, instead of, trying to atone for shit and make up for shit, in the state of Maryland, they said, well, since you done passed this new law, Maryland, that we as the church have been fighting in the state legislature for a long time, since this law passed against our wishes, the Baltimore Archdiocese is going to claim bankruptcy. They're going to file for bankruptcy, you guys. And if you're familiar at all with the bankruptcy process, you know what kind of a dastardly act that is, especially compared to they are why would they file bankruptcy? Because they know they're about to get hit with a shit ton of lawsuits because it was discovered and written, I think it was the Maryland State's Attorney's Office this year published a report that found that the Catholic Church in the state of Maryland was known to have abused over 600 children, right? 600. That's what they knew. That's a firm number. Let's not even talk about the unknown number, but the 600 plus is a firm number. So why would the Baltimore Archdiocese, one of the oldest in the country, by the way, elect to file bankruptcy? Well, because they know they're about to get hit with a bunch of lawsuits. Rightfully so. And I want us to take a listen to this package from Baltimore's WBAL. And the package is going to open with a survivor of child sex abuse at the hands of the Catholic clergy. And the survivors are very upset about this manipulative move undertaken by the Archdiocese of Baltimore, basically in order to circumvent and to protect church assets, protect the assets of the Vatican, to protect these remaining living clergy, the pedophiles that haven't yet died, and a number of things. So I want us to take a listen to this package from WBAL. I think it does pretty decent job of articulating at least the feelings of the survivors about this latest move from the Catholic Church in order to avoid accountability for their generations of abusing and harming children. Let's take a listen.
They're not helping survivors. They never wanted to.
Child sex abuse survivor Teresa Lancaster is not a bit surprised the Baltimore Archdiocese is considering filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. The church is anticipating hundreds of lawsuits beginning October 1st, when a new law goes into effect that eliminates the statute of limitations to file a claim.
The church doesn't need this. Nothing's going to stop the church from their saying the masses and feeding the masses as they claim to do. They have the funds. This is just another trick.
A legal expert the I-Team spoke to says Chapter 11 protection makes the new state law moot. The filing would mean a federal judge would set a time frame on filing lawsuits in child sex abuse cases. The bankruptcy would put limits on payouts. The new state law raises a cap on non-economic damages to $1.5 million per incident. It doesn't cap economic or punitive damages.
Automatic stay shuts down everything. Whatever lawsuit is pending, it's shut down because it's at the auspices of the court. So it means you're going to keep the business open, you're just going to reorganize your debt, you're going to pay it in a form of a plan.
For an example of how this could work, the Catholic Diocese of Harrisburg filed for Chapter 11 protection a couple of years ago. In that case, church officials set aside $7.5 million in a trust fund. Insurers kicked in another $11 million, and a trust administrator doled out the money.
Once again, the survivors will not be able to use their own time. They'll have to be forced to go into it quicker and for a much less payout. I'm hoping the judge will see through this and throw it out.
The Archdiocese says bankruptcy protection will help keep the church mission going and establish equitable compensation for survivors. Reporting live from Glen Burnie, David Collins, WBAL TV.
Establish equitable compensation for survivors, and it will help keep the church mission going if the Archdiocese is allowed to file for bankruptcy. What's the church mission at this point? I mean, let me tell you something. Any institution, company, entity where it's all men at the top of leadership, it's all men making the decisions, are institutions that you need to be very leery of, okay? I was going to say, and that's not a diss to men, but it kind of is, okay? I'm sorry, fellas. I'm sorry. Anytime where it's just dudes making the decisions for everybody else, you directing these bitches, the nuns and the children, and it's going to end bad. I can't think of an all male led organization where it's only men who have say, who have authority, who are in leadership, and that shit is on the up and up. Like it's a good organization. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like they doing good work. Who? Who? The Boy Scouts? Who? The US military? Like who's doing the good work at the all male leadership organization? No fucking where. You know why? I don't know why. There's something the matter. I'd be wondering. But I have enough observational experience to know that if it's all men's making the calls, something's wrong and something's going bad somewhere. And if it's going bad, it's probably going very bad. It's going very bad. Very much like the Catholic Church, right? The other part of the church's statement, when we talk about the church mission, what is the church mission? See, this is why I like the title of my show, Burn It Down with Kim Brown, because I don't have any allegiance to none of these fucking institutions. Not that I ever had allegiance to religion or church in a particular way. I do believe in a higher power. I do call on Jesus. You know, why not? So why not call on Jesus? But my point is, hold on, I lost my point. Let me get back there. Herb Begier, stand up for a second. When they talk about an equitable distribution and payouts for the survivors, what I heard there was like everybody is going to get the same payout. And I don't think that everybody's abuse story is equal in the compensation realm, because I think you have to factor in the kind of abuse that was done, the duration of the abuse. Was it a one time thing versus multiple times over a period of years, possibly, as is the case with some of these survivors? And to me, compensation needs to consider to the extent that the church covered up for said abuser, right? So if the church was aware that Father so and so had credible allegations of sex abuse, but they moved Father so and so to 7 different parishes, and Father so and so was allowed to go from 3 victims at his first parish to now he done accumulated dozens. Like I'm telling you, like there, like the you need, I need for the actuary to be factoring my shit in like that. Were I a survivor specifically of Catholic Church child sex abuse? Like nope, because not only do y'all need to factor in my pain, I need y'all motherfuckers to factor in the cover up. Because if y'all covered up for this fucking pedophile ass priest, that put a double on my shit, put a triple on my shit. Whatever the fuck you was gonna run me, and you done moved this motherfucker around 5, 6 times across the country, around the world. However many times you moved him from whence he touched me, multiply my settlement and my award times that many. If it's 7, if Father so and so moved to 7 other parishes after he left the one where, not me, but you understand what I'm saying, where I was abused, multiply my shit times 7. Like you ain't no standard across the board when we're talking about child sex abuse. And how dare the Catholic Church trying to nickel and dime these survivors? If anything, the Catholic Church in every single parish needs to be grateful and appreciative that it's still standing, that it's still a brick and mortar location, right? Burn it the fuck down. Any institution that enabled a legion of pedophiles, I can't see how it is allowed to remain standing. Couldn't have been me, baby. And again, that's not a. I'm not dissing no survivors' reaction or nothing like that. But I'm saying, had it been me or mine, somebody shit would have got lit up. Okay, like even if I wasn't successful at taking the whole thing down, it would have been some facade damage. You know what I'm saying? There would have been an insurance claim would have had to been filed. Okay, like no, ain't no goddamn way. The church should be grateful that all of their survivors have allowed these relics to remain standing. So they really need to open up them purses. They need to open up those church coffers and don't nickel and dime these people. But you guys, it's not just the Baltimore Archdiocese that is acting a fucking fool out here. The Washington Archdiocese as well, acting a fool, trying to preclude survivors from filing a class action lawsuit. Okay. Well, so the we transfer video I sent you, I meant to tell you to advance it, like started at like 9 seconds in, because I didn't edit the video super great. So if you could start at about 8 or 9 seconds in, that would be swimming. That would be swell. Thank you, my good fellow. So here's the deal. So the Washington Archdiocese is based in Maryland. Okay, the DMV. Everything is all very close here. Don't act. I don't know the reason, Sway. You ain't got the answer, Sway. I don't know the reason. I don't know why the Washington Archdiocese headquarters are situated or addressed in the state of Maryland, but they are. So some survivors who were abused by priests in DC are trying to sue under the Maryland law. Okay. But the church, the Catholic Church, despite tsunamis, multiple tsunamis of evidence, of accounts, of people coming forward by the literal thousands about the abuse that they have endured, the church as an institution is still trying to stymie people's efforts, trying to hinder people's ability to seek recompense for the horrific abuse that they suffered at the hands of their priests. And this story comes from NBC Washington. And let me give you guys some content warning because you're going to hear from one of the survivors. And this person is extremely upset. Okay. You could hear the pain and the hurt all in this person's voice. And that's almost even more triggering than the actual abuse that they suffered that they're going to retell in part in this piece. But just to hear the agony of the survivor, who is very obviously a man, very obviously a very grown man, it's just a reminder that it doesn't matter what your gender identity, how old you are, how many years it's been since the trauma. Like that shit is shit that people do not easily get over. And this is why I always try to loud it up, because society just be like, oh, what happened? So what's up? I don't give a fuck when that shit happened. I don't give a fuck that shit happened last year. I give a shit that happened 10 years ago, 100 fucking years ago. Okay, people don't get over that easily, if ever. So you're going to hear a little bit of that emotion coming through in this interview here on NBC Washington. Let's take a listen. Thank you, Will.
Challenging a Maryland law that allows survivors of sex abuse to sue regardless of when their abuse occurred.
Only on 4 tonight, investigative reporter Tracy Wilkins and the News 4 I-team sat down with a man behind one such lawsuit that's now triggered the church's challenge to the Child Victims Act.
This survivor is part of a class action lawsuit against the Washington Archdiocese over abuse he and others say happened when they were kids, raised and educated in the church. They were able to sue under Maryland law because the Archdiocese is headquartered in Prince George's County. But this man tells us the latest move by the church challenging his ability to bring this suit at all is like experiencing his life-altering assault all over again.
I couldn't tell nobody.
We are obscuring this man's face and altering his voice to help protect his identity.
My mother was a devout Catholic. Who is she going to believe? Who is anybody going to believe?
In a civil class action lawsuit filed against the Archdiocese of Washington, he's identified by the pseudonym Richard Rowe. He says he's the survivor of sexual abuse that allegedly occurred by an unnamed priest in St. Jerome Parish in Hyattsville in the mid-1960s.
There's no doubt in my mind he did it to other boys.
Rowe is one of 3 plaintiffs on the class action suit. In the complaint, Rowe says that around age 10, he was lured to the priest's bedroom and molested. The other 2 men describe ongoing sexual assaults and rape at the hands of priests, one of whom was later convicted of sexually abusing multiple children.
We have to right this wrong.
In the class action complaint, Baltimore attorney Jonathan Shakur laid out the church's history of admonishing priests for abuse of children, a sign he says that they've long known of the problem. Shakur accuses the Washington Archdiocese of aiding and abetting abusers.
They hid it, they concealed it, and then they would move. They played a shell game.
Shakur said it's not lost on the survivors he represents that the Baltimore Archdiocese filed for bankruptcy in anticipation of civil suits, only for the Washington Archdiocese to now try to overturn the law.
And their goal is twofold. One, shield their assets and not compensate these folks for admitted sexual abuse. And 2, somehow circumvent the law.
The church spent years fighting passage of the Maryland Child Victims Act in the state legislature. The delegate who sponsored the legislation said the church is now continuing those efforts in the courts.
Now that we have an opportunity for these victims to finally receive justice, and now again the church is trying to fight it.
The Archdiocese declined an interview request of the I-team, but in a statement defended its challenge to the Child Victims Act, saying the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Washington is asserting its legal defense in the cases filed against it. It went on to say it remains committed, however, to our long-standing efforts to bring healing to survivors through pastoral care and and other forms of assistance. In the class action suit, Shakur lays out how the abuse suffered by these survivors has forever altered their lives, leaving many with emotional distress, anger, PTSD, shame, guilt, all of which this survivor says led to him adopting unhealthy coping mechanisms.
From age 15 until 40, I used alcohol to cope with the pain, but all that did was turn me into an alcoholic.
He said the abuse cost him years of his life and also his faith.
I no longer believe in Jesus Christ. He's my mentor, but he ain't my savior because he would have saved me that day.
Under Maryland's Child Victims Act, survivors are eligible to receive up to $1.5 million in damages in cases against private institutions like the church. Meanwhile, Maryland Attorney General Anthony Brown's office says it's prepared to defend any challenges to that law. Shakur tells us he plans to respond to the church's filing this week.
It is 100% shameful that the Catholic Church in any of its branches are, the Archdiocese of DC, the Archdiocese of Baltimore, like how dare they do anything to try to legally circumvent trying to pay back something, anything to these survivors. It's completely, I guess, antithetical to what I suppose the church claims to represent. Like you're supposed to be a body representing the spirit and the love of Jesus Christ. Is Jesus, do you think Jesus is Jesus gonna go to court and try to break up the class action lawsuit so the survivors of child sex abuse can't sue? Is that what Jesus would do? I don't think that's what Jesus would do. I think Jesus would pay them people. I think Jesus would hopefully go upside the head of all the pedophiles. I hope Jesus would do some thug shit. Really, I hope Jesus would do a lot of things, but I don't think Jesus would try to dissuade the survivors or try to obstruct them in any way from getting any recompense. And this is what the fuck I'm talking about when it comes to sex abuse, period, in societies. Were we a society that actually cared about the well-being of survivors and to ensure that massively influential and powerful and wealthy institutions like the Catholic Church could never enable these things to happen again? If we were a society that was really about that shit, there wouldn't be none of these fucking churches would be standing. Not one. In this DC area, the Catholic Church school system is very robust. There's a lot of Catholic schools around here. All them shits would be tore the fuck down. Like if we really cared about survivors, right? And if you're not familiar about the extent of the child sex abuse sanctioned basically by the Roman Catholic Church and committed in every single one of its archdioceses, apparently, specific to Maryland, there's a Netflix documentary. It's called The Keepers. And content warning and trigger warning, it is not for those who get queasy stomachs easily. It is a very hard documentary to listen to watch. It is extremely explicit and raw. And I can't underscore like how much admiration I have to the people who sat down and allowed themselves to be interviewed for that documentary, The Keepers on Netflix, because those people kept it a buck. Okay. And the shit that these priests were doing to these girls and boys is so abhorrent. Again, I'm stunned that any of these Catholic Church institutions remain standing, because if we cared about such things, these institutions would be gone. Okay. And even for those who are defenders of the church, and I don't know who those people could be, but those who are defenders of the church would be like, well, it was just a few bad apples. Woo! Where do we hear that? In primarily male-led institutions, right? We hear that coming from the cops all the time. It's just a few bad apples. A few bad apples ruins the bunch is the completion of the phrase, okay? And the Catholic Church as an institution is ruined. It's been in ruins for some time. It's been internally cancerous. And the rest of us over the past 20 or so odd years have got an opportunity to see truly into the depths of that depravity that the Catholic Church knew about and was sanctioning and enabling and effectively promoting pedophilia and the abuse of kids. So, we still need to be reminded and questioned openly. I say, like, when priests or the Catholic Church in particular, it's not just the Catholic Church, by the way. It's a rock of religions out here doing wild child sex abuse. But we talking about the Catholic Church today. But openly question, why is Father so and so here? like if there's some shit where the Catholics show up, or not the Catholics per se, but like a representative of the Catholic clergy, or this basketball tournament's being brought to you by Saint Blood of Blood. Why? What for? Why? We shouldn't even allow it. It shouldn't even be allowed to run. And I'm not suggesting that we go into a period where Catholics, a period like we have seen in this country before, where Catholics were not, welcome and able to, worship openly and this, that, and the third. I'm not talking about that shit. But y'all need to go collect y'all folks. Is basically what I'm coming to at the end of the day. And I'm very encouraged to see survivors everywhere try to do exactly that. Try to hold the church accountable. But again, I said we hold the church accountable with gasoline and matches. Okay. And I'm only half ass kidding, because I can't get it. It's just like America. Like, I don't want America to continue to exist and thrive. Why? This is a colony founded upon genocide that continues to deny people basic human rights, that don't give basic healthcare rights to women in this country in 2023. Why would I want America to keep going? To keep going and keep getting worse. The Catholic Church continues to get worse. Defending itself from these kind of lawsuits reveals how much worse the church is. Not only did you allow and sanction all of this abuse, now you're trying to defend it. Now you're trying to say it wasn't that bad. Now you're trying to say, well, them people wasn't hurt or harmed as much as they say. We shouldn't have to kick out X amount of dollars because we shouldn't, because it's us. The fuck out of here with that bullshit. Every institution that is complicit in this, that is guilty of this, keep calling them out. Even if you think that ain't people been to call the Catholic Church out, Kim? Yeah, they have. But guess what? They still need more calling out. Call out the other religious institutions, the churches, the clergy, the people in positions of power, the authority figures. Call out the famous celebrity individuals whose exploits about abuse and rape have been rumored and whispered about for a long time, and give voice and amplify the stories of people that are trying to tell their truths about what they've experienced. Like, we have to keep drawing this shit out, just like this pimple on my face. We need to keep drawing it out. We need to pour peroxide on this whole situation and draw it out. Let it come out erupt through the skin. You understand what I'm saying? Like, we cannot let up on this issue. I'm not going to let up on this issue. I don't give a fuck. Catholics, I don't give a fuck who it is. Okay. At the end of the day, if people are out here complicit and enabling and guilty of abuse and sexual predation, keep calling it out, y'all, because we are still in new and basically uncharted times. We are going to determine direction of how society is going to look at this, talk about this, and address this issue in the future. So the more we ring it out right now in 2023, hope to God that when your babies in 20 years get to be grown youngins, like, the way that they talk about this shit is going to be way fucking different. You feel me? Court. I love you. Thank you, Courtney. Thank you for your Cash App support, Courtney. Thank you for all that you always do for us, Courtney. But no, guys. So yeah, we're not going to let up. We're going to keep our boots on the necks of the predators, of the institutions that help to enable the predators, all of that. And to the people that ignore the issue, the people that, poo-poo or yada yada the issue. No, we're going to keep our boots on all they fucking necks. Because I don't want this for your kids. I don't want this for your grandkids. We're going to do better. Comprendes? Okay, claro.